Funding for Idaho Reports is provided by the Friends of 4, 10, and 12, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by a grant from the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation.
His weakest thing is that he's totally inexperienced.
Well, he doesn't have as much experience as I have had.
That's the kind of political rhetoric flying back and forth in a key state Senate race in northern Idaho. It's a race we'll look at tonight. And we'll profile an Ada County Senate race where two women are running against each other. And in Canyon County, we'll look at Democrat Terry Riley's fight for political survival. Good evening. Tonight we continue our look at some of the most critical state Senate races to be decided in Idaho on Election Day next Tuesday. For the last couple of nights here, we've been detailing the political battles being waged all over this state to elect, in the case of Republicans, enough state senators to consistently override the vetoes of the Democratic governor. Democrats, of course, want to elect enough Democrats. They need at least 15 in the Senate to assure that they can sustain a gubernatorial veto. That might seem like a matter of only inside political procedural interest, but when you consider that John Evans has over the last few years used his veto to kill right-to-work legislation, to kill changes in land use planning laws, and to influence budgets for education and state government, then the issue becomes decidedly more than procedural. The outcome could affect Idaho politics as much as anything that can be decided next Tuesday. We have reports tonight on 3 state Senate races. Interestingly, in each case, the incumbent Democrat has not really been advertising party affiliation, and the Republican candidates are arguing that they would be more effective in a Republican-dominated state Senate. Ann Summerall has our first report tonight on the race to represent the 5 northernmost counties in Idaho. It's a new flotarial district created by reapportionment.
The race here pits Democrat incumbent Vern Lannon from Pinehurst against Republican attorney Bill Nixon from Coeur d'Alene. Time and distance have made campaigning difficult in this huge district, but Lannon, who could have run unopposed in a smaller district, chose the flotarial.
I thought it was important that North Idaho have somebody with experience, somebody that knows their way around Boise.
Lannon will outspend his Republican opponent in part because of heavy support from the business community. He will spend about $15,000 to $20,000. Nixon hopes to collect around $12,000, mostly from individual contributions.
My opponent has been receiving many packet endorsements, and I haven't gotten very many. So it's just a lot of friends that believe in me that are contributing. And I like the concept of having a lot of people contribute a small amount of money rather than too many or too few contributing too much.
The candidates agree on a lot of things, but they disagree on who is better qualified.
My opponent has talked about being uniquely qualified. Well, I'd challenge him. If there's a unique candidate, you're looking at him.
I've been admitted to the state bar since '57. I've run family business. I'm business-oriented. I've represented every person, every representative of every profession or job in the North Idaho area. And I think because of my time spent, that I've earned some uniqueness in knowing this particular area.
His weakest thing is that he's totally inexperienced.
Well, he doesn't have as much experience as I have had.
I know North Idaho. I'm a working man. There are a lot more working men than there are attorneys, not to discredit that profession, but Boise has a lot of attorneys.
As an advocate or as a representative of other interests, I might have a better ability to represent how the people feel and be less concerned with my own ego or my own personal attitudes. I'm a representative.
Nixon was one of the lawyers who took the reapportionment issue to court. He's been critical of both Senate President Jim Resch and House Speaker Tom Stivers. Lannon says this will cause Nixon trouble if he goes to Boise.
Well, if he's going to march down there and, as he's done at the newspaper, and criticize Mr. Stivers, as I have, I can get away with it, I'm a Democrat. And Mr. Resch, I'm not sure what committee assignments he'll have, but they will not be important ones. When he sponsors legislation, it's liable to find its way to the House Ways and Means Committee desk drawer. The chairman of that committee is Mr. Stivers, and it will go nowhere. I would think they don't put up with, as Mr. Stivers said, he does not put up with insubordination. And my opponent seems to be quite insubordinate when it comes to Republican leadership, and that would render him quite ineffective.
I don't spend time or waste time getting mad at people, although I have disagreed and spoken out as to their attitudes or their feelings. They're public servants, they're public people, and you can comment on their actions. I don't know Mr. Stivers, but I know Mr. Risch, and I think that he is a big enough person that he would communicate with me. In fact, I'd predict with 99% accuracy that he would communicate and work. Whether he agreed always, I wouldn't expect him to, and I wouldn't expect anybody to always agree with my position.
Nixon says the issue is not effectiveness. He says the real issue is that Lannan isn't really a Democrat.
And the more I see of him, the more he is endorsing special interests. He has taken the conservative Republican stance on many issues recently, although when he's talking to the wilderness people, he may seem to espouse only their interests rather than the multiple use interests. So I think that he is making noises like a Republican now because it's more expedient. I think by his actions and his political noises that he's making, he sounds like a born-again Republican running under the Democratic Party label.
A born-again Republican. Let's put it this way. I have a lot of Republicans that support Senator Lannan because I'm a moderate to conservative yet progressive person. I grew up in a Democratic household. I am a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat, and I'm certainly not ashamed of that.
The candidates do disagree on some things, including right to work, the grocery tax, and a State Department of Commerce.
Right to work, I've always opposed it.
I'm very much in favor of a right to work.
Will the initiative removing the sales tax on food be passed?
I think it's going to pass. I'm going to vote for it.
I would hope not. It's very popular to vote against any tax.
That Department of Commerce is something that Idaho needs. When you look, and at our surrounding states, you look at Washington, you look at Utah, you look at Montana. They're spending money, cooperating with their businesses, their chambers of commerce, and they're trying to attract that new business. They're trying to help the existing businesses.
I support commerce and industry, but I'm not satisfied yet that a department level, Department of Commerce and Development is necessary.
What would you say your strong points were?
I'm a fighter. I'm tough. I've been in the trenches. I know how that machinery works. I know when to talk tough and raise hell, if you will, but I also know when to be quiet.
And I think that I'd be a more effective spokesman for the interests and needs of North Idaho people in that capacity, working within a majority with my own ability, if I have any, to communicate and get along within the party.
That race is one we'll be watching with particular care on election night next Tuesday. We focus now on two campaigns in southwestern Idaho. In one, the Democratic incumbent is seen as having an excellent chance for re-election. In the other, the Democratic incumbent is struggling for political survival. The first race is in District 19, generally the north and east ends of Boise. The incumbent is Gail Bray. Bruce Reichert has our report.
Gail Bray is in a unique position. She's a woman, a Democrat, and an Ada County state senator. No one else can make that claim. And she's in a unique race, the only contest pitting two women against each other for the state Senate. Her opponent is Edith Miller Klein, a 20-year veteran of both the House and the Senate, and one of the first real fighters for women's issues in the state legislature. Klein can claim responsibility for the complete revision of Idaho's probate code, and she fought long and hard for the Equal Rights Amendment.
I feel that I have an exceptional background of education and experience. I have degrees in business and economics and in general and tax law. And I also have been successful in private practice for many years. And I feel as though, from that standpoint alone, too, that there is a difference between our candidacies. And I'd say this, that I certainly would never have run if I didn't feel this sincerely, and that's no reflection on my opponent at all.
There's another thing unique about this race. Both candidates seem to genuinely respect each other.
I think quite a bit of Edith Klein. I think she did a wonderful job while she was in the Senate for 20 years.
But her respect for Klein is hardly enough to get Bray to slow down her frantic campaign pace.
Every night there are 3 people, or nearly every night, there are 3 people who type information into computers. Every morning there are 1 or 2 people who take the information from my walking list off of the walking list and put it onto forms which then can be put into computer. I walk every night and all day Saturday and every Sunday afternoon.
But Klein is also pounding the pavement.
I've traditionally paid my own way. I feel in my own mind that the only way that I can be truly independent is to put my own money in these races. I don't have a lot of yard signs or other things that I would like to do in this campaign, but I'm not able to do because I don't have the money. But I hope to have a pretty good campaign regardless, and an economical one. I have a lot of shoe leather and a lot of energy, though.
You have been accused in the past of perhaps not working hard enough 2 years ago when you were defeated in the primary. Now,
Yes.
you know better than anyone that you're running against perhaps the best organized candidate in the state.
Yes.
Are you up for the challenge? Can you meet the challenge? Are you prepared to do what needs to be done?
I think so. I've been working very hard this time. Every day I've been out, even in the cold weather, going door to door. I've always felt that strengthened my campaigns, that when people meet me and I have an opportunity to exchange ideas with them, that it really is, there's nothing that you can substitute for that kind of contact. And I've been doing a tremendous amount of that.
Klein estimates that she will spend a little over $10,000 on the campaign, while Bray, who 2 years earlier was involved in what is still the most expensive legislative race in Idaho history, plans to spend close to $15,000. Bray says that this year she is receiving money from traditionally Republican sources, a sure sign that they expect her to be reelected.
I basically was elected the first time by individual contributions and some PAC money from the traditional Democratic PACs, labor and education. It's interesting that Edith Klein would say she's paying her own way because she received money from these same groups for many, many years.
It's sometimes difficult not to see this race as one between the old guard and the new guard, with the differences between the candidates being one more of style than substance. But there are 2 issues which are separating the candidates, and these issues will be decided by the voters November 6th. Edith Miller Klein is in favor of an initiative which would remove the sales tax from groceries. She says the tax is regressive, it hurts the poor. And Klein is also in favor of a constitutional amendment which would allow legislative districts to cross county boundaries. She says county boundaries are archaic and they make no sense whatever when deciding legislative districts. But Bray disagrees.
County boundaries are one of the primary tools that we have in the state to guide us in not just drawing districts to gerrymander for incumbency, to make sure we're reelected. If you have to respect county lines, then there is one disciplinary tool over your actions. For one, Ada County will have all of its 8 senators and 16 representatives elected from within Ada County boundaries, not represented by a senator from Valley County, a senator from Canyon County, a senator from Owyhee County, a senator from Elmore County. As good as they might be, they don't represent Ada in the same way people elected from Ada will represent Ada. I think it's a very valuable disciplinary tool. We can live within it. I do not think the Constitution should be amended in order to placate and ensure incumbency re-election.
I've looked through your campaign brochure. I've looked at even the small print, and nowhere on here do I see the word Democrat. Are you embarrassed to be a Democrat?
No, not at all. In fact, as I go to every door, I use the phrase that I am the only Democrat in Ada County. Out of 18 legislators, I'm the sole Democrat. People are always amazed. And the reason I did not put Democrat on my brochure this year or last year is because for many people, that's as far as they will go. I want people to give me the opportunity to introduce myself as an individual, and then I always share at every door that I am a Democrat. I believe in the two-party system, and for us to maintain it in Ada County and in the legislature as a whole, it is necessary for people to choose individuals, not parties.
That's one of the strategies people use. My friends have mentioned it and sort of deplored that fact, but I hadn't even thought of it until it was mentioned to me. I think that any strategy a person uses in a campaign is permissible as long as it doesn't undercut another person. And, you know, I feel that if my opponent wants to be both Democratic and Republican, why, that's her choice. I'm Republican.
Most observers say the voters of District 19 can't lose, that both candidates for Senate have amply demonstrated their ability. And in the same breath, they say, isn't it too bad they have to run against each other?
The other closely watched Senate race in southwestern Idaho is in Canyon County. And again, Bruce Reichert has our report on the Senate race in District 11. There, an incumbent Democrat is in an uphill battle to survive politically.
Senator Terry Riley got to these chambers by doing something no man had been able to do for 44 years. He got to the Senate by being a Democrat in Canyon County. 2 years ago, Riley won in the old District 12, which included the north side of Nampa, but the new reapportionment plan is forcing him to run county-wide in one of the most Republican and conservative counties in the state. In biblical terms, it's like throwing Daniel into the lion's den.
I think that the reapportionment will ultimately hurt me in this race. Running county-wide, that's 3 times as many people as I ran with before.
To counter this, Riley is stressing his effectiveness as a freshman senator. He carried 23 bills, and all of them passed the Senate, and he's stressing the need for a two-party system.
I think the point which I'm trying to stress the most in this campaign is the need to maintain two-party system. I have seen in my 2 years in the legislature various instances of abuse of power, and I think that that occurs whether everyone is all Democrat or whether everyone is all Republican. We need to have checks and balance within our system of government.
I've heard him say that many times, and I don't quite agree, and I don't think his reasoning holds water.
Riley's opponent is Jerry Thorne, a longtime Canyon County resident, a Nampa businessman, past president of the Nampa Chamber of Commerce, and a Mormon. In short, a very formidable opponent.
Why elect Republican senators from Canyon County and then send a liberal Democrat over to cancel their vote each and every time that something comes up that they disagree on? I think it's really important this year that we get that Senate so that we can override the vetoes and start putting some of the Republican programs to practice in our state. That's what I'm working hard to try to do.
Most political observers believe that Terry Riley is fighting an uphill battle this year, ironically because the courts bought the argument that the county's large Hispanic population would be better served if candidates ran county-wide. I say ironically because both candidates believe that the new reapportionment plan has watered down the Hispanic vote. And if Terry Riley is defeated this year, well, Hispanics will lose perhaps their strongest ally in the Senate. Riley is the administrator of a private nonprofit corporation called Community Health Clinics. According to Thorne, that means Riley is not in the real world.
I'm in the mainstream of politics and in the real world. If I think sometimes that people overlook the fact that Senator Riley is really not in the real world. He works for an agency that's government supported. His approach to a deficit would be to apply for another federal grant.
Well, I think my opponent has primarily been using a tactic of name-calling, which I don't think that serves anyone's interest.
You think you are in the real world, then?
I know I'm in the real world.
And Riley points with pride to some of his real-world positions.
I have made an impact on issues of hazardous waste here in the area. I think I've made an impact on some of the children's issues here in the area. I certainly have been a strong supporter of city and county government and some of the local control issues. I think that I have also provided a conduit into the entire governmental process for many people who previously have been left out of the election process and the whole political process.
But Thorne has zeroed in on 2 of Riley's votes, one dealing with abortion, the other with drunk driving. to show that Riley is out of touch with the voters.
I don't want anybody to have me quote me to say that Terry Riley is against or is not against abortion. However, there was a vote in the last legislature, this implied consent bill, which merely asked that if a woman came to have an abortion, that she be given all the facts of what she was doing to her body psychologically and physiologically. Terry was one of 5 senators that voted against that bill.
On the informed consent bill with abortion, we were advised ahead of time that if we passed that, that clearly would be an unconstitutional act. And when I took the office of State Senate, I said I would uphold the Constitution. As it turned out, indeed, that bill was determined to be unconstitutional, and therefore it never was implemented.
There was a bill that came forward that was in the law enforcement area, which would have required driver's licenses to be revoked of young drivers who were found to be driving while under the influence of alcohol. He voted against this one also, again, one of 5 people. And both these bills were supported by Governor Evans and sailed right across his desk with no problem. They're both law.
On the revocation of the driver's license for adolescents caught with alcohol, that too was never implemented because the crime did not fit the punishment. And this was an argument that I used in opposition to it. In neither case does it mean that I support abortion or that I encourage alcohol by minors. I certainly do not in either case.
Even though he plans to outspend Riley, Thorne does not underestimate his opponent. Earlier this summer, Thorne ran some radio spots suggesting that Riley was hiding something from the voters, namely the fact that he was a Democrat.
Have you noticed none of Terry Riley's ads tell you he's a Democrat? Maybe he's ashamed to be a Democrat or trying to trick you into thinking he's something he's not. He's probably even less likely to tell us here in Reagan country he's a member of the Mondale Campaign Committee.
I have Democrat on my brochure. I have advertised in radio as well as advertised in newspaper that I am a Democrat and I am representing the two-party system. I'm proud to be an Irish Catholic Democrat.
Irish Catholic Democrat Senator Terry Riley is generally thought to be behind in that race in Canyon County, but he does have a deserved reputation for being an aggressive campaigner, and there still are a few days until the election. My colleague Gene McNeil is here now to quickly review these races that we've been looking at over the course of the last 3 evenings. And it probably bears repeating, Gene, why we have spent the time doing this and why both political parties see these handful of state Senate races as being so important.
Well, Mark, it's hard to underestimate the importance of it. If the Democrats don't get 15, we'll have a situation in this state that we really, in modern history anyway, have never had before. The Republicans have controlled the legislature for most of the last 25 years, but they have never had the 2/3 majority in both houses that's necessary to override a gubernatorial veto. And in a lot of ways, it would be a one-party system we would have then.
The House of Representatives is already that way. There are enough Republican votes there to routinely override the governor's veto, but the Senate has not. Well, let's look at, we sort of looked at this from the Democratic perspective, but you could flip it around and look at it from the Republican perspective. But the best Democratic shots for, I guess, retaining seats, let's run through those quickly.
Well, they really have to. They have 7 unopposed senators. They really have to retain another 6 incumbents. Gail Bray, we saw tonight, that's certainly one of them. 2 that we looked at last night, John Peavy in the Blaine-Gooding County area, Claire Wetherill in the Elmore-Owyhee County area. Those 2 they have to keep. They have to keep Vern Lannon up north, another race we looked at tonight. They also would have to keep Ralph Lacey over in Bannock County, which is probably not considered to be difficult, and Marguerite McLaughlin in the Clearwater, Lewis, Idaho County areas. Originally, there was some thought that she might be in some trouble. She has some new territory to run in, and her opponent is well known and running hard. But from what I can see now, the Republicans consider that a long shot to take that one away. So they have to maintain those 6 incumbents and get themselves up to 13.
And again, it's risky to make predictions this many days even before an election, but most of those seats look reasonably comfortable for Democrats.
I think Lacey, Lannon, McLaughlin, and Bray look quite comfortable. Peavy and Wetherill are closer.
Okay. Now, there's one incumbent Democrat that is, well, at least two of them are in very serious trouble. Senator Riley in Canyon County and Senator Wellard over
Jerry Wellard in Bingham County. Yes. But Jerry Wellard is probably in more trouble. Most people don't give him a chance, although I am hearing today that the latest polls are indicating he's running a lot closer than most people thought he would. And we saw that Terry Riley has a close race. It would be nice if they could hold on to one of those. Nice for the Democrats. Then they'd only have to pick up one more.
Okay, now in order for Democrats to get to this magic number of 15, or for Republicans to get to the magic number they need of 28 Republican senators, Republicans will have to win, or Democrats will have to win in just really about 3 or 4 other races.
There really are only a few races left, assuming that the Democrats are not able to keep both Terry Riley and Jerry Wellard. They would need to pick up one of them in Kootenai County, and one we looked at the other night, Mary Lou Reed, looks like the better shot of those two. They would also have to win a very tough race in the Floterial in southeastern Idaho between Dwight Horsch and Rusty Barlow that we also looked at. Darrell Salaz in Ada County is probably the best shot of those three.
So any way you cut this, it's going to be a tough row to hoe for Democrats to even hang on to those 15, to hang on to the seats they have now, plus gain one more.
It's going to be close whatever way it goes. Very, very close, within 1 or 2 at the most.
How would you bet?
At this moment, I would bet that the Republicans will not make the 28 they need. I would bet they would miss it by only 1.
Okay. Again, this has affected, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, labor issues for sure. Right to work, repeal of the prevailing wage law. But it's also maybe more directly in the last couple of years affected the budget process in the legislature.
I think that would be a tremendous impact. As Senate President Jim Risch put it to me the other day, the budget would then be set in the Republican caucuses of the two bodies. To a large extent, it has been set there for the last few years, but that would become an overt fact, and in Risch's opinion would avoid a lot of haggling and perhaps tax raising toward the end of the session.
Because the governor vetoes appropriation bills frequently, hoping that they will be increased by the Republican legislature. Sometimes it happens, more times it doesn't.
And on budget matters, unlike some of those other issues, I think the Republicans would be likely to hold very, very steady as a caucus and override those vetoes.
Just have about 30 seconds left, but I know some Democrats have been critical of the governor, who has a great stake in these elections, for not working harder on behalf of some of these Democratic candidates.
They have indeed been, and I don't know how to judge the fairness of that criticism. There has always been criticism in the state that the Democrats simply do not operate as a party, and in general, I think that's a valid criticism.
Everyone on their own, while the Republicans seem to be more coordinated.
And that seems to be the case again this year.
Okay, very good, Jean. Thank you very much. Just a reminder about our last of the Idaho debates later tonight here on public television. Senator James McClure will face off against his 2 opponents, Democrat Pete Bush and Libertarian candidate Don Billings, 8 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time here tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Mark Johnson. Good night.
Funding for Idaho Reports is provided by the Friends of 4, 10, and 12, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by a grant from the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation.